Hello and welcome once again to the Blueprints. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brock, with new content for you every single Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We ask that you like, comment, subscribe, share this program. I guarantee you this is information you're probably not getting in the mainstream media, and we need to get this message out, and we need your help in your social media network. So also, if you can't listen or download this entire program at this exact moment, please tell your friends about it because they can do so and platforms like Castbox, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, you name it, it is out there. Great show lined up for you today. We're going to continue last week's theme as we talked to Chris Workington from the beautiful province of Alberta about everything is broken and what's going on in Canada right now and how this is connected to the decisions made by the Justin Trudeau government. So we're going to bring on a great friend of the show. I think we're going to rename the show to the Blueprint, to the Larry and Jamie Show. And we're bringing on Larry Brock, Member of Parliament, Brantford Brant, beautiful province of Ontario. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Jamie. Happy to be here.
You're a great guest, and also so many of these issues that we're going to talk about today fall in your wheelhouse as a former Crown prosecutor. So let's start with this. We had a very sad incident. We had a Ontario provincial police officer who was shot responding to a car in the ditch. The funeral was held last week. Then we had another incident where a group of teenagers beat an elderly man in Toronto to death. I think there were 8 teenagers, 13 years old. Another tragic story. And it just seems like, what is going on? Do you not just get that feeling?
It's a disturbing trend, Jamie. You don't even have to look in the papers and the news releases that are coming out on a daily basis, but these are disturbing patterns and trends that I have seen since the Trudeau government has come into power in 2015. Since that particular time, crime across this country has increased year after year after year. And it was one of the driving factors, really, Jamie, why I chose to leave 30 years of work as a Crown prosecutor, because I said this existing system is just not working. It's failing Canadians. It's putting communities at risk. The police don't have enough tools. They don't have enough resources. They don't have enough funding to ensure that these communities are safe. And policies introduced by this Trudeau government, literally since 2015, have created this sense of entitlement that criminals have in this community, that there are no long-term consequences. When it comes to bail, it's a catch and release mentality that a lot of these people have, knowing full well that regardless of their background, regardless of the nature of the offense that they've committed, they have a very good chance of receiving some form of bail. They make promises to the courts. They make promises to Crown attorneys that they'll abide by the conditions, but they don't. The sureties who provide supervision over these individuals make similar promises daily to judges that they'll be the eyes and the ears of the court, and they turn a blind eye. So to your example, the unfortunate killing of the OPP officer, that should have never happened. Should have never happened for a number of reasons. This person had a very lengthy criminal record. He was on bail for serious related offenses. He was on the highest form of judicial interim release in terms of house arrest and electronic monitoring. He was initially denied bail by the courts. After so many months, he brought a bail review. He convinced a Superior Court justice that they should take a chance on his release, and he was released. His very first return date to court, he failed to show up, and he was on the lam for 4 months. He had 2 weapon prohibitions. That didn't stop him from acquiring probably an illegally obtained weapon, although that's not been confirmed. I think we can surmise that when he took the steps to be in possession of a firearm, a gun, a pistol that had the serial numbers sawed off or sanded off, that it was probably illegal. And there has just been a failure in so many steps, a failure by the court systems, a failure by the supervisors to ensure the safety of the community. And the police didn't have the resources to actively look for this individual for close to 4 months when there was a bench warrant issued for his arrest. So again, to my point, this Trudeau government has created an atmosphere that people believe that they can continue to be exhibiting their lifestyles in a lawless behavior and with very few consequences. And it's putting communities at risk. And so substantial changes need to be made, Jamie.
Well, I did notice for those outside Ontario, I do apologize for this, but I do notice that Toronto City Council, the Police Services Board, which made a decision that goes to council at a later date, had a very controversial decision, which was whether or not to hire 200 more officers to deal with some of the exact problems you're talking about going on in the city of Toronto, which is the feeling of just being unsafe no matter where you're going right now, because the criminals seem to have a very confident, if you will, atmosphere around them that they can almost do whatever they want.
Yes. And again, this is something that has not generated overnight. This is a pattern of government policies since 2015 that have allowed these individuals to feel emboldened in their ability to terrorize communities and act with almost impunity. When you have a liberal government, a federal government telegraphing on one hand, we're all about community safety, we're all about ensuring the safety of victims. And then you introduce and pass Bill C-5, which takes all the most serious gun offenses in the criminal code, all of the drug offenses in the criminal code, and you remove all the mandatory minimum penalties and say that you're all about community safety. Well, there's a disconnect there. And the only message is to the criminals. And I've mentioned this numerous times in the House. I've accused the Justice Minister. I've accused the Prime Minister, Bill Blair, Mendocino. I've accused them all that criminals are laughing in their faces. They're thanking the Liberal government for making it easier with no long-term significant consequences should they be caught. Where did we come as a society to take a drug trafficker who ought to be, if convicted, sentenced to a significant period of prison time? Why do we remove that ability for someone who wishes to traffic in fentanyl, the most dangerous and lethal poison available in this particular country and around the world? Most of these traffickers traffic out of their own houses. And here we have our Liberal government allowing them to continue to serve their sentence in the comfort of their own home. So it is such a real disconnect with the reality on the streets. But at the end of the day, the bottom line, Jamie, is all of these policies are contributing to the lack of trust that Canadians have in our institutions. I think on the one hand, I think people have an appreciation for law enforcement, but they understand that there is only so much that law enforcement can do. They're great at investigating. They're great at arresting these individuals, removing them temporarily off the streets. They get placed in the hands of the criminal justice system, and we have a failure. So we have to talk about some serious bail reform issues and equipping our police agencies across this country with the appropriate tools so that they can carry out their mandate to keep our community safe.
And we've talked about before a few weeks ago with yourself, Glenn Motz from Alberta as well, about the firearm confiscation. Well, nobody, they call it a buyback program, but I don't know any firearms owner who actually bought their firearm from the government. So it's not a buyback program, right? It's a confiscation. And I think this goes to the broader point that you were making as well. When people are feeling this way, when they're paying their taxes and expecting certain services, certain basic things to be done in their community. One is public safety and keeping the bad people behind bars, the repeat violent offenders behind bars so that they can actually see value for their tax money, so they can actually continue on with their lives. But if they're being victimized over and over again and they don't feel safe, but they're being asked over and over again to pay more and more taxes, that's when this breakdown, it's just like the government is basically telling people, stop complaining, but keep paying your taxes. Actually work harder. You're going to take home less. We're going to take more, and we'll decide what's better for you. This is the cycle that we seem to be in.
Couldn't agree more.
Like this, I know we need to change the government. We had a confidence vote. I know we get lots of comments in the feed here about confidence vote. We had one shortly before the break. We had a confidence vote so that if it had failed, we would have went into an election. Unfortunately, the NDP sided with the Liberals and kept them in power. And this is the cycle. So this is why we ask, I think, your social media and others in our caucus, they're doing their things to try to get this message out, that to keep pushing back, to tell people there is an alternative, there is a better path.
No question. And yeah, I've been following our leader in the last couple of weeks, Jamie, and he has done a lot of media requests and issued a number of press releases. He's tapping into a level of discontent that Canadians have across this country. The issue regarding affordability, the issue of the brokenness that people have, the despair that people have, the hurt that people have, the concern for their safety. He is tapping into the reality of what Canadians are talking about. He is not talking out of both sides of his mouth that we often accuse the Prime Minister and his ministers and his government of doing. He's actually responsive to the needs of Canadians. And that's what Canadians, in my view, should expect from a responsible, competent federal government. And the contrast between a Poilievre-led government and a Trudeau or whoever is going to replace Trudeau could not be vastly different than it is right now. We are offering hope. We are offering a plan, and we are going to ensure that in the area of criminal justice, that reforms are being tabled. I know that a number of my colleagues and our colleagues, Jamie, I should say, are toying around with putting together some private member bills to make some significant changes to the area regarding bail, to reflect some of the inadequacies that we've always known about the bail system, but also to tap into the disconnect that's actually happening in our courts across this country.
And you can even see what the path is for this Liberal government, right? Over the Christmas holidays, they mentioned a firm commitment to go to electric vehicles as the main source of transportation. Well, we all know it's more about getting someone out of their car and into public transport, into government transport. I don't call it public transport, it's government transport, other than the government telling you where and when you can go based on energy usage, right? We're already being told here in Ontario that you should do your laundry during certain periods of time because of time of usage pricing and a whole bunch of other factors too. And this is just yet another poke at people, right? It's almost like doing, I say this before, I know you've heard me say it, it's being done to you, not for you, right? It's one poke after another. And just to kindly to just beat people down so they just submit to the will of government, because of course as Justin Trudeau thinks, the super smart people in Ottawa are there, and we should just listen to them and accept what they give us, right? What they take from us and decide what we get back in the form of a grant, a rebate, a program, etc.
And isn't that what you just expressed, the hallmarks of a socialist government? It is to a T. I couldn't have summarized that better. That's exactly what this government is doing. We know best. We can control your lives. More regulation.
We'll decide what companies get the grant money, not you, right? And then the company says, well, I think this product is better, but the free government money is over here, so I'll just submit to the government. I'll do what they want. It might not be the best. It might take forever to develop that technology. Don't let the market, right? And as a company, it's easier to sell your product to government. You just got to cozy up, make a few meetings, hire the right lobbyists and lawyers, and you're good to go. Or you can go in the open market, in the free market, and actually compete with other companies who are trying to develop products that would appeal to the biggest mass possible, or at the best price, product or service.
Right, which brings up, it's a nice segue to another issue that I know that is near and dear to our hearts and should be to the hearts of Canadians, and that's the nepotism that exists in this particular government. I could go through a ream of ethical violations that Justin Trudeau and his cabinet ministers have all been found guilty of since 2015. Most recent, of course, is Minister Mary Nig. Her ethical violation, not on one occasion, but on two occasions, awarding a contract to a well-known Liberal supporter, a Liberal media personality, particularly on the CBC, and for her to say, I accept responsibility, in my view, is akin to say, I'm only responsible because I got caught. Where do you draw the line, Jamie? And I know that the whole legislation of the conflict of interest was introduced by former Prime Minister Harper. And I've got nothing but good things to say about our former Prime Minister. But one thing that perhaps is lacking in that piece of legislation or regulation is meaningful consequences. There are none. And for Justin Trudeau to give his end of the year interview with the CBC and wax on that the system obviously is working because these bad actors have been found guilty of ethical violations, and that Canadians should find solace in the fact that the system works because they were detected, they were weeded out, that they were found guilty of an infraction. But simply being found guilty without consequence is meaningless to Canadians, and in my view, is the complete opposite impact of open, transparent, and accountable government. Simply stating in the House, I'm responsible, without doing the right thing. Decades ago, Jamie, you know this as well as I do, decades ago, ministers or even MPs found guilty for some of these ethical violations since 2015 would have resigned immediately or would have been forced to resign by the leader of that party, if not the prime minister. That was the right thing to do.
Absolutely, it was the right thing to do. How many times did this happen, though? Over the pandemic, we had a former MP, a Liberal MP, getting money. We had another company run by Liberal-friendly firms that were supposed to build ventilators, had never actually built a ventilator in their whole entire company's history. We have anti-Semites, racists, getting government money through the Heritage Department for their funding. We have the trip to Aga Khan, Billionaire Island. We have the We Charity scandal. We have the minister, as you just mentioned, giving tens of thousands of dollars to her buddies. And this just goes on and on and on. And again, it goes back to the last thing we talked about. People are being asked to pay more, work harder, take home less, and give it to Ottawa because they know best. But I tell you what, they are destroying your money. They have devalued it with the printing of money. They continue their overspending. They, despite what the finance minister says about reining in spending, they haven't reined in anything. They are going as hard as ever and devaluing, debauching your currency at the same time, making your savings worth less. It's just an onward spiral. And now we have an article out today that I'm looking at right now that talks about children's medication. It is still, despite what the government says, they're getting all this extra supply, there's still bare shelves everywhere.
How could this be happening in a G7 country? We raised this issue, as you know, Jamie, several months ago. It was an issue in the United States long before it hit our borders. The Americans dealt with it quickly and responsibly to ensure that children in that country receive the medication. We brought this to the attention of the government. We thought that it was falling on deaf ears. We kept pressing the issue. We heard from the Minister of Health that steps were being taken. I think the handicap or the holdup was the fact that there were some contracts from other countries in the world, but they could not supply it to Canada because it didn't have the French label attached to the bottle itself. So there was a bit of a hiccup there in terms of receiving that product to fill our empty shelves. And I thought, I can almost swear to this point where I thought Minister of Health Duclos indicated that that problem was going to be rectified in very short order and that our shelves are going to be filled to address this need. Now, to hear from you that these shelves are still being empty and families are still being impacted should never, ever be happening in this particular country. And again, so just another failure of delivery. This particular government is failing Canadians on so many levels, Jamie. It's really hard to keep track because every day it seems to be another controversy or another issue that is coming up that should not be happening. This pandemic has impacted the entire world. And to read about countries who have planned and organized themselves government-wise to ensure that as we transitioned from the heart of the pandemic to post-pandemic recovery, that the delivery of services would not be impacted to their residents. And I hear success stories all around the world where governments, not necessarily first world governments, but governments took the appropriate steps to plan. Again, to our leader's point, this government gets an A for announcements, gets an A for sounding as if they are going to make life better for Canadians, but they fail miserably on deliverables. Canadians expect a level of competency from this government. And I can't think of one department that the federal government has jurisdiction over right now that is not letting down, if not failing Canadians. And it should not be happening.
Absolutely, especially when people are being asked to pay even more. 2 million cases backlogged at the immigration department, people waiting to have their families reunified, people waiting to bring their trades into this country to help our economy. And yet we still see this flailing about by this government. And it just doesn't seem to be any solution to that other than to ask for more money or throw more money at a problem. At the same time, we are not seeing any changes in the cabinet in terms of bringing in people who might be competent at the same time to help fix these problems. And again, we're going to division again, back to the old thing, right? During the last campaign, Justin Trudeau's numbers fell. All of a sudden, non-vaccinated versus vaccinated. That was the division point. Right now we're firearms owners and non-firearms owners, right? Like just picking groups of people and putting them against each other to create that distraction for us to kind of take our focus off why all this stuff that was working suddenly isn't working.
Well, he and his government can continue on that path, or they can accept the reality that the ever-increasing crime that we are seeing is impacting liberal-held ridings as well. And I hope that his government and his MPs are fielding the same number of concerning calls and emails that you and I are getting and our colleagues are getting, because this is not a political issue. This is a national crisis that needs to be dealt with. If the Trudeau government doesn't want to deal with it, let's bring on an election, because we've got the solution. We will bring trust. We will clean up the streets. We will give Canadians confidence that our criminal justice system can work and will work.
All right. I usually, as you know, give the guests always the last word. That was a good last word here. So maybe I might end with a question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot here, so you can get mad at me later on. What do you think about doing a show? I'll bring you on again because, of course, I'm going to change the name. It's going to be with Larry Brock and Jamie. What about, we see lots of comments in the feed here. I'm just looking at some of them now. What if we do a question and answer period where people can write in questions and we'll do it live on the air and start to answer some of these? How's that? I'm putting you on the spot here. I'm sorry.
Unscripted, unedited, bring it on. You and I are all about accountability and transparency, but the most important thing is to educate. And that's what we're doing week to week on your show, Jamie. And I love being your guest.
And I love you coming on. All right, Larry Brock.
As your co-host.
You heard it. You heard it. Larry Brock is going to do a question that we're going to do it together. We'll do
Absolutely.
it together, and we'll set that up. So we will promote it ahead of time so that the viewers and listeners have appropriate time to think about their questions and tune in at the exact moment and fire away at us and see what we can do here. So thank you very much, Larry Brock. Appreciate your time yet again, and we will have you on another time. So
thank you, Jamie.
I think like the 10th appearance, you get a free slice of pizza. So we'll work on that. All right, Larry Brock, member of Parliament, Brantford Brant. Appreciate him. We appreciate you and your time. We know it is valuable, so we ask that you like, comment, subscribe, share this program. This is great information. We want to get out to the public. Those that aren't getting that message in the mainstream media might not know about this, might be open to hearing a conservative point of view, and let them know at the same time that they can download it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. You name it, it is out there for each and every one to enjoy. Until next week at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, I do remind you that low taxes, less government, more freedom, that is the blueprint. Thanks for joining us.